Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if it's your first time here. Today I come with a warning. Yes, the KZ reptilian overlords are back again, and this time they've delivered their latest weapon, the KZ ZEX. Let's get into it. What's cracking, audio fans? It's David here from Prime Audio Reviews. So the KZ ZEX, this is a hybrid dual driver model. It's got one dynamic driver and one electret or electrostatic driver in it. It retails for about $22, so it's firmly in that budget realm. I know there are a lot of people excited about this, so we're going to get right into it. All right, so there's the ZEX shell, and yeah, it's a nice looking little shell. It comes in three colors. There's a gold one and there's a cobalt, which is effectively this faceplate with a blue shell. This one's got a matte black faceplate with a smoky transparent shell. And you can sort of just see the drivers inside there. But overall, it's a nice looking little IEM. I actually slightly prefer it to the look of the CCA. I think this one just looks nice and stealth. It looks pretty sleek. And in terms of comfort, they've pretty much nailed it. These are really comfortable. I can wear these all day long. Noise isolation is about average. It's not good and it's not bad. And the build quality is pretty exceptional for such a cheap, affordable IEM. And once again, we see the same cable that came with the CCA NRA. And it's a good cable, except for those angled connectors. Please make a straight one, guys. Not everybody's ears are the same. So I swapped out the cable once again for this black one, which does have memory wire, but straight connectors, so I can form it to my ears naturally, and it turns out much better solution for me personally. But let's get on with it, because I know everyone's keen as heck to find out how the ZEX performs. It's got that new technology inside, that new electric driver, and I tell you what, man, just like the CCA NRA, it is a lot better than I would have expected. This new driver technology, I can see good things coming up in our future, audiophiles and music lovers. We got some great times ahead. In terms of sound signature, the ZEX here, it has a fairly mature sound. It does have an elevated bass, so it is kind of a fun EM still. It's not really boring or analytical sounding. The bass on it it's pretty nice. It is not a particularly fast bass. It has a sort of medium paced attack and decay, so it's got some nice natural weightiness to it, and it is able to deliver a fair bit of impact, and it can thump, and the sub bass digs down pretty deep as well, so you get some nice low rumbles going on there. So the bass is pretty much on par with the NRA here. Pretty good, nothing exceptional, but when you're talking about a $22 IEM, yeah, the bass is pretty darn good. Moving on to the mid-range now, and just like the NRA, the ZEX's mid-range is fairly forward. It's full-bodied. It's not like that old school KZ budget model with the deep V recessed thin mid-range. In fact, it's quite forward and full. It's fairly rich. You know what? Considering this is a hybrid model, the coherency of this earphone is actually really excellent. You would be hard pressed just from listening to it to not know that it wasn't a single dynamic driver. They've really melded the dynamic and the electric driver together really, really well. The coherency is spot on. Now, when it comes to vocals are pretty good. They sound nice and natural. It's an organic, earthy sound. They're not the most articulate. The mid-range clarity is, I would say, kind of average. It's not one of those ultra clear sounding mid-ranges, but at the same time, it's not a dark mid-range. It's not a muddy one. It sounds fairly natural and organic, but the overall resolution is about average. The detail retrieval is quite good on these, but there are some micro details that get lost. You've got that fairly warm bass and a smooth treble, which I'll get to in a minute. But yeah, not the greatest micro detail retrieval, but details in general are pretty good on this. But I would have liked to see a little bit more mid-range clarity. However, the tone is right. Everything sounds fairly accurate and natural. Moving on to the treble now, and the treble on this is actually, it's a very smooth one. I think the Electret drivers are going to do really nice things for treble, because although this one has a very smooth treble, there's no harshness, there's no sibilance, but the detail retrieval is actually pretty darn good. This isn't a sparkly treble, but it does have enough energy to counterbalance that bass, and it does a pretty good job with imaging within the soundstage. By the way, the soundstage on the ZEX, I would say it's somewhat intimate. It's not really small, but it's somewhat intimate. It's not particularly wide, but it is a kind of a rounded soundstage, which is nice. It has a nice natural feel to it, but it's not large and expansive. It's fairly up close. Having said that, the ZEX doesn't sound congested or cramped, but it's not particularly big either. Let's do a couple of quick comparisons now, and I'm going to start naturally with the CCA NRA, because they have the same driver configuration. They're from the same factory, and in fact, they have a very similar sound. And I'll throw up the comparison graph here. Now you can see how close they are in their frequency response. However, there are some significant differences in the sound, and in a blind test, I'm pretty sure I could easily tell them apart. The main differences being in the treble. I think the NRA here is a bit livelier in the treble. It has sort of just a hint of sparkle, and it's a somewhat brighter and a little bit more lively in the treble. And that has a trickle down effect, which affects the mid-range as well. The mid-range on the CCA NRA has better clarity. It has better instrument separation and better spacing between instruments. On top of that, vocals are a little bit more forward. Vocals pop a bit better on the NRA, whereas the ZEX just kind of has, it's a less dynamic sounding IEM. The CCA is a bit more dynamic, a little bit more engaging for my ears. But if you are treble sensitive at all, the ZEX is probably the one to go for. And finally, the bass on both of these models is very similar again. I would say the NRA has slightly better bass definition, and again that is tied to the treble tuning. If you have a more forward or brighter treble around 7 or 8 kilohertz, that generally improves the definition of percussion attacks and things like that. So out of these two, my personal choice would be the NRA, although they are quite similar, and I think most people are going to love both either way. But if you, like I said, if you don't like bright earphones, you don't like a forward treble, the ZEX will be better for you. However, if you like more detail retrieval, a little bit more clarity, the NRA is, in my opinion, just slightly better. Then there is the KZ DQ6, and I'm not going to get too much into this one because this one is a lot closer to the CCA NRA in sound signature. It has a more dynamic, a bit livelier sound. The mid-range is a little bit more recessed compared to the NRA, but that just allows the treble to come a bit more forward and be a little bit more energetic. So again, I would choose the DQ6, but this is only personal preference, keep in mind. Finally, we've got the Blonde BL03. Now I'm bringing it the big boys for this comparison, because who would have thought after all this time that we're still talking about the Blonde BL03? We're still using it for comparisons with all the good budget earphones that pop up, because they're just that good. And even to this day, they're still really, really good. Now the Blonde here is more tuned towards the Harman target response. And basically that means it has a more elevated bass. The lower mid-range and the upper bass is more recessed and a bit leaner compared to the ZEX. They're both pretty smooth in the treble. They both roll off fairly quickly. They're both non-fatiguing. But because the Blonde's mid-range is sort of pulled back a bit, the treble comes more forward, the bass is a bit more forward. This definitely has a bit more bass presence than the ZEX, particularly mid-bass. I personally still find the BL03 to be more engaging. Out of all the earphones on this table, actually I would have a hard time choosing between the BL03 and the NRA. The NRA has some technical advantages over the Blonde. It has better clarity, has better detail retrieval, and faster transients, probably better instrument separation. But the BL03 just has that sort of magic touch, and if you've heard this, you probably know what I'm talking about. But anyway, despite having sort of said I prefer everything else here, the KZ ZEX is still a very good earphone. $22, hybrid, new technology, new driver, really good value, fantastic build quality. Do I recommend this? Heck, yes I do. Personally, I would still take the NRA, but for KZ lovers, just jump on them. You won't be disappointed. By the way, if you enjoy this type of content, want to see more reviews like this, make sure you are subscribed, and if you are not, hit that subscribe button now. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, Parfam audiophile style, and until next time, I'll see you later.